Ludovico Scarpiotti, the famous Italian nobleman who'd run races for Ferrari, Formula 1 races the previous year, he was kind of the team leader. But the cars were so dreadful that we were last and next to last on the grid. So off we go. I follow Ludovico around because, you know, he's the team leader. But halfway through the race, we'd gone from being like 17th and 18th to 9th and 10th. And 3/4 of the way through the race, we were 5th and 6th. And so I thought, huh. So I made a bit of an effort and got past him and finished 3rd. So this was pretty good. But on the back of the open convertible car, going around after the race, there's Graham Hill on the outside, and Denny Hume in the middle, who was 2nd, and there's me here, and we're waving to the crowd, you know, like this, waving. And I turned this way, just as Graham turned this way. And he looked at me, and his arm dropped, and his jaw dropped, and he said, "Christ almighty, don't tell me you were bloody 3rd. Anyway, everything was great, and we then went to Spa-Francorchamps, the fastest, most dangerous track in the world, with the GT40, and run the 1,000 kilometre, driving with Jackie Ickx in pouring rain the whole way. And Jackie's first lap was really one of the most amazing I've ever seen, because here in this terrible rain, in the foothills of the Ardennes Mountains, through this immensely fast track, 8 miles to 1 lap, on public road, and 30 seconds later, Vic came past in 2nd place. 30 seconds in 1 lap. I was impressed, I can tell you. So, now we do the Spanish Grand Prix, and then the next Formula 1 race was the Belgian Grand Prix, back at Spa, where we'd just been 4 weeks before. So, I know the track very well. I'm a little bit nervous about it. Excuse me, it's one of the bids coming in from Europe. Sorry about that.
Hello. Hello. Yes.
And that's a bid for $5 million, right? No. I know a little bit about the engine, so if anybody has any questions, I can take a little bit of a Q&A, and I will attempt to answer any questions that you guys have. Don't all ask at once.
What will be in
There are, I don't have that information because obviously they're not sold yet, but there are people who are interested in them who run racing teams who are still running the 917s. There's been a lot of interest in the 908. Actually, let me just talk about the engines for a little bit while we're here. This is a 771 motor. Arguably one of the most versatile ones here. It was an option on the 904. You can get it in the 904. It's an 8-cylinder motor that is a 8-cylinder version, if you might say, of the 4-cam motor that they ran at the 550. Very complex on the inside, took a long time to assemble, a long time to build. Porsche replaced it with the 908 3-liter there, which those of you guys who are 911 buffs can immediately see how that's a very, very similar design to the 911 design. Monumentally easier to assemble than the 771. The 771 was also used in the 908, and I believe it was used in the 910, right? In the very early in the 910. So it's used in a lot of different cars. But it's an incredibly complex motor, so you really have to know what you're doing in order to assemble it. In the center here, of course, we have the big boys, the 4917 engines. I don't have each one, remember what specs are each one, but one of them has been recently used and run. One of them, I think it's that one or this one, is brand new NOS, brand new parts on the inside. We have Alvin Schwinger, who used to be the head of Porsche Motorsports North America and used to be, I believe, the co-owner with Dieter at Andile. Come in and inspect all these engines here about 2 weeks ago. So that one appears to be brand new. And this one is also made from some new and used parts. This one is recently rebuilt with used parts, and this one is slightly used. The 908, which is really gotten the most interest out of anybody, and any of these engines in the group, notably because there's a lot of 908s, well not a lot, but there's a number of 908s out there running without 908 engines, with had 911 engines replaced in them. because parts were hard to find. These guys wanted to run their cars on the track, and they wanted to get going without having to wait for an engine. So the 908 is basically the crown jewel of the collection. It's brand new, made from 100% NOS parts. So.
Sorry about that. So, just to give, I mean, most of you here have got some idea on racing cars and suspension and whatnot. I'll tell you what the chief engineer for the Cooper Car Company in Formula One, a guy called Tony Robinson, who in previous life had been an ice cream salesman, the car handling was terrible. When he rang me one day at home, and he said, "How does it handle?" I said, "Well, it's terrible." I said, "You turn into a corner at 120 miles an hour, the back end comes round, you give it opposite lock and more power to hold the angle, and it goes straight into a huge push, it understeers." I said, "It pushes all the way through the corner, and then when the weight's all on the suspension, it lifts the inside rear wheel off the ground and it goes back into a big oversteer." And there's a silence, and he said, "I think I've got the answer, mate." I said, "What was that, Tony?" He said, "We'll lower the rear tyre pressures by 3 pounds. Oh, yeah. So, on about the 5th or 6th lap, the suspension broke, front suspension broke. I'm going 150 miles an hour, and now I've got no steering and no brakes. So I had a huge accident in which the car rolled over the barrier, trapping this arm between the car and the barrier, and almost tearing it off. And when the surgeon got me on the table a bit later in the University of Liège teaching hospital, he said, "Monsieur Redman, it may not be possible to save the arm." I laughed. I said, "Thank you, Professor." He said, "Why are you laughing?" I said, "Because I'm here." So it took me all year to recover, and in November of '68, I went to race in South Africa in a series of races in a Chevron, 9 hours, 3, and the second is I'm going on vacation tomorrow. Anyway, he kindly stayed behind, and I said to him, "I've just signed a contract with Porsche for Daytona in February." That was 6 weeks away. And he said, "I'll experiment, and it may work and it may not work." And he cut my arm open again completely from one end to the other. He cleaned off the broken ends of bone that weren't healing, took bone out of my hip, and stuck it in, and didn't put me in plaster. And he said, "Don't use it till you have to." So I arrived at Daytona in a sling, but in the hotel I took the sling off, and I appeared driving for Porsche, never told anybody, of course. And I drove with one hand on the wheel and my elbow on my knee at 200 miles an hour in these 908s, but I knew there was no way I was going to go 24 hours. However, 5 factory 908s, 10 drivers, and the first car came in about 8 in the evening with the engine going do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. The engineers examined it, stood up, said, "We are finished. They will all break." And we were out by 11 o'clock. So that saved me, you know, I couldn't have gone 24 hours. So after the race, Rico Steinemann, team manager, said to me, "Brian," he says, "do you wish to be number 1 in your own car, or do you wish to go number 2 to Siffert?" Well, Joe Siffert was the fastest driver in the team. So I thought, do I want to go with my own co-driver? Because in those days it was very much number 1 and number 2. So I thought about it for a bit. I said, okay. I said, I'll go as number 2 to Siffert. And we had a really fantastic year, winning the World Championship for Porsche for the first time ever, and winning 5 out of the 10 Endurance Championship races. We had a really great time. But because of the change in the regulations at that time were that you could build prototypes like the 908 or in small numbers. There was no regulation about it. But if you wanted to run a 5-litre car, there was a regulation where you could run a production-based 5-litre car. And of course the FIA hoped that Ferrari and Maserati, Aston Martin and all the rest of them would bring in 5-litre production-based engines to race, but nobody did. And so, in late '68, they changed the rules again, and they made the minimum production requirement 25 instead of 50. And at that time, Porsche were already working on the 917. I think they knew before the FIA announcement, which wouldn't be surprising because Huschke von Hanstein, the former team manager, was a member of the FIA committee. So they built, whilst they were racing, 5 factory 908s. They were building 25 917s. And also building a new 908-3 all at the same time. And this is all Ferdinand Piëch, the nephew of Dr. Porsche, who was unbelievable, unbelievable. Porsche did not have the money to do all this, but he didn't care about that. All he cared about was winning. And this is what happened, you know, and the 917 became the most successful endurance car in history up until the Audi more recently, and was legislated out at the end of 1971. But of course, you know, in 1969, when the drivers heard about this new 917, we're all about, because we knew how quickly it had been put together. And when Porsche rang me in England to say, Herr Redman, you will come and test the new 917, I thought, why do they want me? You know, because I'm living in England and they've got 5 German heroes waiting to die for the fatherland. So they said, please ring back quickly. So I rang Siffert in Switzerland, and I said, Seppi, here's Brian. I said, have you tested, you know, the new 917 yet? There's a long silence. He said, no, Brian, not me. We let the others find out what breaks first. And so, the first one to go was Kurt Ahrens, who went to Wolfsburg, the Volkswagen test track, and he lost control of the car in the rain. It aquaplaned, and it went under the Armco barrier, where it promptly broke in half right across the cockpit, and he went whistling down the track, strapped in the back half, minus his shoes. So this didn't impress the drivers too much, I can tell you. It didn't. And the first private owner to buy one, John Wolfe, an English driver, the first private 917, took it to Le Mans, and in practice his co-driver, Dick de Martland, lost control at 200 miles an hour in a straight line over the Mulsanne hump, and he spun like for 400 yards without hitting anything. He drove it back to the pits, they got out, and he said, thank you very much, John. He said, I have now retired from motor racing. And he never raced again. And all the Vic Elford and Richard Atwood and myself all tried to get John Wolfe to let Herbert Linge, the Porsche test driver, start the race. And John said, no, it's my car. I am starting the race. And he was killed on the first lap when he went off at the White House corner. And it broke in half. And then after, at Le Mans in 1970, with John Wyer running the team, we had a lead, my co-driver, Siffert, and I, more than 4 laps, it was like 5 laps, at 2 in the morning or so, and it's raining, you know, the rain's pouring down. Jackie Ickx is in 2nd place in the factory Ferrari, but he's a long way behind. Another bit coming in. Wayne, where are you?
Right here.
Wayne?
Right here. Okay, I apologize. I'm 1/10 as entertaining, but I will continue. So the 908 engine that we have over here that has been the most popular, it's a chain-driven front, dual overhead cam, as you can see there, design, and it's
like a comedy act, isn't it? And so now Ickx and Siffert are racing each other, even though Ickx is 5 laps behind. And first of all, Ickx crashed going into the chicane by the pits and killed a marshal, corner worker was killed. And as Siffert came past the pits on that lap, he missed top gear, with 4 gears. He missed 4th gear and the engine blew up. These engines, they were safe to 8,200 RPM. But if you went to 8,400, that was it, they broke. And so it was a fantastic engine, no rev limiters in those days. And then 983, that produced in 1970. When I went to Weisslark for the Christmas party, there in the corner of the workshop is this new 908-3. Now in England, in the war and after the war, was a famous flyer who lost both his legs below the knee in an accident before the war, called Douglas Barber. Well, then the engineer said, Herr Redman, you like to test, you know, to sit in the new 908-3? I said, great. So I sat in it, and it didn't have the front bodywork on, and the feet were in front of the front wheels. And I looked at it, and it weighed 1,100 pounds. I mean, incredibly light, unbelievable. And I got out, and the engineer said, "Howden, what do you think of the new 983? And I said, "I think it's a very good car for Douglas Bader." Wrong. Wrong. How I didn't crash, I'll never know, but over the years of racing, I've got programmed into, if you've got the brakes locked and you're going, head on into something, you have to come off the brakes. And I came off the brake at the last minute, and I spun the wheel to try and go and hit the barrier backwards, and it just slid, and I was able to collect it and luckily able to carry on, but he never knew how close a miss it was.
Brian, do you have a favourite race car? One that you think, do you have a favourite race car?
Favourite race car? I love driving the 983, but I'm nervous about it because you're so far forward. But I drive one today for the Collier Museum in Naples, every couple of years at Monterey, usually.
No, I thought you'd say an MGTC.
Yeah, great car.
Question. Last time I saw you was at Watkins Glen, Formula 5000 race. You were driving for Jim Hall, and I remember you pulled in the pits. I would sneak in the pits. I was right there. You pulled in, and you had quick time. He guided you on the helmet. I want to know what was different about that was Lola Chevy from the other cars. What did Jim do?
Uh-oh. Hey, Scott, can you hit the stop button on that?
Well, I can probably manage without. Can you hear me? Sure. No? Yeah, we can. Well, we won the Formula 5000. It was an open-wheel, single-seater with a 5-litre 302 cubic inch Chevy in the back. And it was like a Formula 1 car. It weighed about 1,350 pounds. It was light, had big tyres, a wing at front, and it was a very impressive car, tremendously fast. In Watkins Glen, I don't know if it was that year or not, but I actually set an outright record in practice, faster than Donohue's 917.30, and faster than Donohue's 917.30, and faster than the Formula 1 record. So they were really good cars, but the question was, why was our car better than the others? Well, it's been due to work, really. Work done by Jim Hall and his crew in Midland, Texas, on Rattlesnake Raceway. The car was always beautifully prepared. In 4 years of racing, we had one engine failure, and that was in practice, and we had one suspension failure, and that was also in practice. So we had tremendous reliability. Of course, for 2 years, my main opposition was Mario Andretti, and he was the only one that had the Firestone tyres. We had the Goodyears that anybody could buy, and he had an advantage with those tyres. But he didn't win the championship either year because we had better reliability. His cars broke more often than ours did, especially the gearbox, and we never had a gearbox failure. But after that, after we'd pretty well killed Formula 5000, they changed the rules for marketing purposes and wanted to call it Can-Am again, single-seat Can-Am. So now, at the end of 1976, we have to put bodywork on our open-wheel single-seater and call it a Can-Am car. And so for the first race of the new year at Saint-Jovite in Canada in May of 1977, off we go. And I drive the car around, it's good, I came in the pits in the first session after about 15-20 minutes, and Jim Hall said to me, "How is it?" I said, "It's good." And he said, "What do you want?" I said, "I don't know really. Take 1/4 of an inch off the front wing, lower it." Which he did, and on the next lap, at 170 miles an hour, it took off in the air. So that was a wrong call. And it came down upside down, and the roll bar promptly collapsed, and I went down on the road. I wore a hole through my helmet here, broke my neck, C1, smashed this shoulder, split my breastbone, broke 3 ribs, and fortunately I was unconscious at the time, so I don't really remember anything about it. And then the ambulance taking me to the Montreal Neurological Institute blew a tyre going about 90 miles an hour. So The next day, when my wife Marion arrived from England, she opened the paper, well, not that she didn't open it, on the front page of the Montreal paper was a photograph of the ambulance on a jack with the two ambulance guys working on the wheel, and me lying in the back looking not too good. And the headline was, "Redman ain't more, Redman is dead." So anyway, about a week later, they drilled holes in my head here with the weights going down the back. I was stark naked and strapped in, you know, arms, ankles, waist, everything. And I open my eyes, I see Jim Hall standing there, looking down. And he said, "How'd you feel?" And I said, "I think I might have to miss the next race." It took me a year to recover from that one. So, anyway, all good fun. Is that it?
Did you want to talk about the 908 and the
908?
And the fire, or the story you told us, the fire, the 908?
The fire, yes. Well,
Since you're on topic.
After that camera shot was taken in the car, on the top of the lorry in the 914-6, the rally car. Strangely, I don't want to bore you with all this at too great a length, but at the end of 1970, having won the World Championship with Porsche, now for me the third championship win, and for Porsche the second championship win in a row, I decided that all my friends were being killed and I was next on the list. So I retired. And I went to South Africa with my wife and 2 little children, my car and all my worldly possessions. But after 3 months, I decided that one day all the black people were going to turn around and kill all the white people. So I said to my wife, we're going back. So we went back, we didn't have a house to go to, and I didn't have a drive. I'd lost my drive to Derek Bell. So Sid Taylor found me a drive in a Formula 5000 car. That was okay, but then John Wyer rang. He said, "Brian," he said, "we'd like you to do the Targa Florio with Seppel, which we'd won the year before." He said, "Derek's never been there, and we think you'd be better for it." So I said, "Great, well, that looked like a great opportunity." "You must have the accident. Do not crash on the right side." Because I promptly got the concrete post right in the right fuel tank, and it exploded. I was on fire from head to foot, doing a very fair imitation of Joan of Arc, for those Europeans who know who Joan of Arc was. And it took, nobody knew where I was. And after 12 hours, I was blind because of the fire, and my hands were bandaged, I was bandaged all over the place. And Richard Atwood and Pedro Rodriguez came to look for me. And they said, "This hospital is dreadful. There aren't any nurses. People are smoking, the cigarettes are all over the place. We'll take you back to the hotel." So they took me to the hotel, and then Gulf Oil and Porsche flew me to England the next day, but that's another lengthy story. So I was very, very lucky. We'd practiced driver changes 12 or 15 times against the stopwatch the night before, you know, to get quick stops. They're automatically, as it exploded, I automatically shut my eyes and hit the safety, the release on the buckle, and leapt out. So that was another great experience.
Over your career, who do you see as your most fierce competitor?
Well, probably Andretti in the 2 years of 74 and 5, and then 76 it was Alan. He was tough as well, but he hadn't done as much road racing as Mario. In 73, Jody Scheckter, who was a madman. I mean, he was a young guy who was going to become world champion, and he drove like unbelievable. I mean, just, you know, crashing all the time and hitting them. We hit each other. In 2 years with Mario, we never touched wheels. And with Jody, in 7 races, we hit each other 3 times. At Seattle, there's a chicane at the bottom of the back straight, and we came into it on the first lap, side by side, and neither of us backed off. And of course, there's only room for 1 car. So we hit, and I did a bit of a jiggle, but I came out of the chicane in the lead. And when I looked in my mirror, all I could see was dust. And I crossed the start and finish line at the end of the first lap, 40 seconds in the lead. Scheckter had spun, and he held the whole field up. But he got going again, and he finished second. So, I don't know.
Who pays you your highest paycheck as a driver?
Highest paycheck, in a race was $14,000 for winning the first Long Beach Grand Prix in 1975. That was the most I ever won in one race. And as Bobby Enser said to me last week at Amelia Island, he said, you know, Brian, he said, I came up from nothing. I was a dirt poor. I said, yeah, Bobby, you did a great job. Yeah, he said, I tried that road racing, he said, but there's no money in it. And he says, how are you doing? I said, terrible, how are you? He says, well, I'm a multi-millionaire. I said, well, good for you, Bobby.
And was Enzo Ferrari as cheap as everybody says?
Well, I drove for Ferrari twice. In 1968, in a Formula 2 car. I got this invitation to come to Maranello. I flew down, tested at Modena on the test track. At lunchtime, Mauro Figari said to me, Brian, you see over there in the little trees, in the raincoat? I said, yes. He said, it's Signor Ferrari. I said, wow. So what Figari is telling me is go faster. So I tried harder. I didn't go any faster, but anyway, he said, you'll drive at the Nurburgring, Jackie Ickx, the team leader, and such a date, so we go. And it's on the Suchlife, the south circuit, which is still very tough. It's about 5 or 6 miles round, but it goes down, it goes up, goes through the trees. Well, about the 4th lap, first of all in practice, I come in, the last practice session, about 15 minutes from the end, Figari said, Brian, why you stop? I say, I've gone as fast as I can. He said, Brian, go out and try harder. You're in 12th place. So now I go out and I drive like a maniac. And I've been in 4th place all along. I've never been in 12th place. I went a 10th of a second quicker. And the race came, and off we all go, and about 6, 7 laps into the race, Ickx is leading, Piers Carriage, the English driver, is second, Kurt Ahrens, the German, is third, and I'm fourth, but we're all in a bunch, we're all together. And we go past the pit and I go, bang! I hit a stone right through my goggles, which were World War II surplus. Weren't exactly strong stuff. And I got hit by a stone. I thought it had hit me in the eye. And I stopped, I threw my goggles off. And then I blinked like this, well, I could see. So I then drove 5 miles without goggles into the pits. Figari said, what's the matter? I said, so he goes, it's okay. Where are your spare goggles? I said, I don't have any. So he says, take Ickx's. And Ickx's were dark green, which they weren't too bad where it was sunny, but under the trees where it was dark, it wasn't too good. So again, I drove absolutely like a man possessed. And I set a new lap record and finished 4th. So I'd gone from way last to 4th. And so dinner comes. Well, I tell you, when I got back in the hotel, I sat on the bed and I just sat there like this. I wasn't feeling good. So when Figari came up, then he goes away from dinner and he comes back. Brian, he said, I speak with Signor Ferrari. And for the rest of the year, you drive the Formula 2, Formula 2. At the end of the year, Monza, Formula 1, Formula 1. I said, no, thank you. He said, no, thank you? What do you mean, no, thank you? I said, if I drive the Ferrari, I'll be dead by the end of the year. So when they asked me again in '72, Figari said to me, Brian, he said, you are the only man Ferrari ever asked twice. But I only ever met Signor.
All right, Sandy, that was pretty good, right?
Great videos today, Wayne.
All right, remember, if you want more, please hit the subscribe button. We'll keep going.
Don't forget to mash the like, too.
Mash the like button. Yeah, I think it's down.